We're very happy to be here. I'm honored to be here and speaking with Dr. Renae Dickerson. I do want to say that Dr. Dickerson is an Air Force veteran, and I don't know what sound they make. So I'm Army Hua.
Aim high.
Aim high. See, they're so bougie, but they don't do sounds and calls. They just say cute little words like aim high. But I'm very happy for her to be here, and I want to start off. We're going to kind of break this up into like three different segments. Talk about military experience, talk about trauma, and then talk about why we should get benefits that we deserve. Can you tell us a little bit about why you joined the military? Go ahead and go into your military background and anything else you want to say on that subject matter.
I would love to. I think, and I'm speaking from the standpoint of a woman, joining the military was an opportunity to do something different, um, and to experience new experiences, see the world, opportunities, and it was an opportunity to be excited about something big, belonging to one of the largest organizations in the world, improving myself.
Okay.
Mhm.
How long were you in the military?
7.5 years.
And why did you make a decision to get out?
I had just finished my master's. I applied to officers training program, and the only slots that was available was, um, I think it was supply or mechanics, and, and my degree was in mental health, so I made the decision.
Okay, I can see why you would make that decision.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us from getting out of the military and transitioning into your profession? Can you tell us a little bit about how that worked for you and about the profession, all these credentials and everything you've done because it's so much. Can you just give us some of that? We're interested in knowing more about that background because I've talked to you before. I've seen you in interviews, and I don't get a lot of your background, and I think it's good for people to know how you've been accomplished since you.
Well, Nicole, I am humbled by that question, and I have to tell you, it definitely was not a straight line. I came from Inglewood, you know, South Side, and, and to leave the Chicagoland area to go to another country, some of the things that I fantasized about. And when I said I was excited about joining the military, I was I decided to leave my fiance because he was playing ball in Europe and he wanted me to wait till he came back for 4 years, after 4 years so we can get married. I said, I'm gonna join the Air Force. And I was on my way to Spain and I was just contemplating all the amazing things that I would experience. And when I got there, I did. But no one told me about the misogynistic um, mentality, the rape, the acceptance culture, the institutional betrayal. And so it was, I was a person prepared to take on the world like a lot of us are when we leave high school and go to college and join the military, and then understand you're entering a new world and there were ways that you needed to survive. So I had to learn how to survive. And I did continue to go to school while I was in the military. And I did experience sexual harassment. I experienced sexual assault. As a matter of fact, the father, the husband at the time, caused the death of my child. And the military did more to protect his career and tried to punish me. Said, do not um, provoke your husband to violence again.
Wow.
And so when I made the decision to leave again, because the first time when I tried to leave, that's when my son died. I made the decision again because I'm military trained. I can be strategic. I made a plan to have my father fly in one morning, take my daughter, and it had already made plans with my commander. This is the situation I'm going through. You know this because I called the police earlier in the year, and um, and I received a lot of support in the military. So just as there is a dark side of the military, there are also amazing people, amazing experiences. And after leaving that one particular duty station, I moved to Illinois. At the time, it was Chanute Air Force Base. It's closed now. And my commander at the time, he says, I was reading your file and you took humanitarians. I know that can affect your career. What do you want to do? I said, I want to go to school. I said, okay, you can do that. So he arranged what my schedule could make it possible for me to go back to school. And part of my my work since I was in school was doing a lot of writing for the commander for a lot of his programs. I was the historian, so I was actually published while I was still in the Air Force. When I did make the decision to leave the military, that was in '91. Do some of you remember the Tailhook investigation? And it was congressional hearing about a naval convention, and one person in particular was the first to complain about sexual harassment and sexual assault. I had just left the military, and that was on the news, 5, 6, and 10. I said, "Wow, finally!" This is 1991 and '92. I said, "They're finally going to do something." Well, full speed ahead. We started hearing more and more cases, and the most recent case was, of course, 2020, Vanessa Gillian. And however, there were several deaths before her and after her, as recently as 2022. Um, so there's a lot of improvements that have been made regarding that particular issue. And and I just want to stress, I do appreciate the improvements they're making in the military. There's more to be done. Oftentimes, the focus is on what uh, the individual is experiencing in the military. So we're going to put it in all these, make these rules and have these investigations. It's the life after the military.
Yes.
The the lived experience during and after the military is very significant. Many women who leave the military do not feel as if they're veterans. It takes other veterans to say, "Oh yeah, but you served, you signed on the dotted line," and when we signed on the dotted line, we knew of the potentiality of getting hurt in the military. We also knew about you can even be killed in the military because it's up to and including life. You know about the life insurance policy, but no one told us you need to safeguard yourself because of the sexual or the military sexual trauma. That is the term. And after I completed my master's, while still stationed in Chanute, and we got out, ended up well, my husband stayed in, we traveled to Guam, we were stationed there. I worked for the Guamanian government. And now I have this degree, and I've also had the experience of the military, the good, the bad, and the different. And I went in for an interview, and the interviewer asked, "What would you do if you walk into um, the center and you see one of the guards on one of the clients?" I'm like, "What? Oh no!" I'm straight up Inglewood. I'm gonna snatch that person off. I'm gonna take that person out. They hired me. I said that was the craziest interview. But do you know? Let me tell you the rest of the story. In less than a year, as a person, I uh, I was the social worker for it was a detention facility for serious offenders who were youth, but they also had what it was called like the cottage home, and that was where youth, the parents didn't want their children anymore because we're in Guam now. That's where they would go. So, I would, that was my job to help them, move forward and become successful in their life. But they were not detainees in the detention center. They scheduled some major renovation to take place at the cottage home, and they placed my my clients in the detention center. Now, I didn't think that was a good idea, but at the time, I thought I was just an employee. And when there was this one particular person, because he was a ward of the state, I could take him out shopping for school clothes, and I would attend to take him out to lunch. And this is an opportunity to kind of take him out of that environment for a brief period of time. And he said, after it was over, the day was done with, he said, "You said you care about me, but you keep taking me back to that place." I said, "Well, this is where, DCFS has placed you. But I'm here now." He says, "No, you're not listening." And he kept saying that. And he said, "They do things to me." And then after he shared what happened, and for the 2 weeks he was there, he was raped over 40 times.
Oh my God.
And so now the memory of the interview came up like, oh no, she wasn't playing. And so I went and told my boss, he says, "Renae, you're in Guam, you're not in the mainland, it's different here. But whatever you do, I'll support you." And so he gave me the steps to take, because everyone at DCFS, they have an attorney, guardian ad litem, a CASA, whatever have you. I called everybody. This is what's going on. He can't stay here. I need to take him out. And and I went to the director of the facility and said, "I need to take him out of here." "Well, you can't take him out of here. He's placed here." I said, "Well, he's not safe." He said, "How do you know it's true?" "Well, it's not my question. It's not up to me to question. This is what this young person has said. My goal is this person is to feel safe." And so the director of the facility, she didn't allow it, but his attorney, and then also the attorney general or assistant attorney general, said I could go ahead and remove him, and I found a placement with adult protective services. He was 17 at the time, about to turn 18. And he had to have surgery. And I said, "Okay, listen, I'm taking to his new location. I need to call the police." "Well, you can't call the police because he belongs to DCFS." I said, "Well, somebody needs to call the police, so I'm taking him to the hospital." I find out about 2 weeks later, no one called the police. And so next thing I know, "Well, Renae, you should have called the police." Hey, I was in the military. I take notes and names for everything and anybody I talk to. "Well, you said, and you said, and you said, whatever." And it also was a congressional hearing. And so here it is, Southside Inglewood girl, um, you know, in a room filled with Congress people over in Guam, want to know how come the caseworker did not call the police. No one said that, she's the person that pulled them out. She's the person who got them to the hospital. She's the person who asked to call the police, and DCFS said no. Lo and behold, it that particular case did change how DCFS, um, if there was a situation that the police needed to be called, it's your job to call the police now. You do not just talk to DCFS. And that's one of the cases involved in making that law change.
Oh, perfect.
Right, that was the early 90s. And they wouldn't give my name. His attorneys and the courts were protecting me. And I didn't know the institution was already under investigation. And the director on camera said was actually the caseworker's fault. She should have called the police. So she's the person who wouldn't allow me to take him out. I took him out against her. She's my boss. And so I ended up going to court testifying against her. And there were attempts made on my life.
Wow.
And there was an attorney who really helped walk me through this because I had to have, I guess, what is that, a tracer put on your phone because there's death threats.
Mhm.
She had already been raped. She was there for a number of years, and the issues at that particular institution had been going on for 30 years.
Hmm.
And the director was well aware. And so, needless to say, after my testimony, and then people came forward and said, no, yeah, this happened to me. And this is before Miss Dickerson even came to Guam. And and at the time, I did not even think about what I experienced in the military. The only thing I thought of, I needed to make sure he was safe. Because if I allowed him to stay there, I would fail him. And I didn't know this total gangster attitude I had. I'm thinking it's Inglewood, but it was also my need to survive what I experienced in the military.
So how did that were you finished? I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So how did that affect how you lead and conduct your business today? And then I also, after I ask that question, I do want to pause just in case people. So we are in a room with people. There's a, and I don't want to neglect that. So just in case people have questions, I don't want you to wait. If it's relative to this, it may be something else you want to expound on about that. But what I'd like to know is how did that? Because that's one of the first experiences you had like that, or was it
Outside
outside
the
of the military?
military,
So how
yes.
did that affect once you realized that this was similar to your military experience? How did it and did it affect the way you navigated through life and the decisions that you made going forward?
So, and I've learned this from combat veterans. Um, there, there's this sense of, I guess, a change of behavior where, uh, for me, I will put myself in harm's way to help other people, and not really realizing why I was doing that. When I started, grew up in Englewood, I grew up in church, so my
Same,
parents were strict, and
same.
so for me to like go gangster against the director of the detention center, like I don't care, bring it.
Mhm.
But it also affected, I ended up working for DCFS when I came back to the mainland in Arizona, and so we get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work to prepare for a case. I mean, you know, there was, let's say, I became a workaholic. There were times when I managed DCF cases here in Chicago. I had questions about my workers and making those home visits. So the day that they say they were going, I would just happen to be there. And then if I'm really concerned, I would go and kind of park inside a house at night and just kind of see the activity if I had any concerns. And it took my husband to tell me, that's not healthy. Like, why are you doing those things? But with everything, I had to work harder. I had to um, do more. And I was the director of the vet center in the south suburbs. Even my veteran says, like, wait a minute, you got to delegate more, Renee. We need you healthy. I'm like, oh, okay. And at some point, I had to go into therapy to find out why I was so intense. Here it is. I'm thinking I'm helping combat veterans, and they helping me. Oh, Renee, you have PTSD. What are you talking about? I didn't go to combat. You guys are heroes. And no, we know the symptoms. We know the signs.
Interesting. What's interesting about that is um, what you said. You're in the profession, you've gone through mental health training and these things, and you didn't even realize that you were in a position that you needed help at the time. So busy helping others. Is that correct? Am I understand that correctly, or
Well, not I did not seek um, treatment, but I did seek spiritual guidance. I was deep in the Word. I'm still um, a novice, uh, you know, as far as the study of theology. It's my lifetime journey. That has really brought me a long way. However, I did not know that I was actually affected. And one of my favorite characters in the Bible is King David. I say he was a Marine, because okay,
yeah,
I'm getting some head
sympathize.
nodders in here. He
I
did some
feel
stuff. He
that.
done some stuff, and institutional betrayal with Saul. Saul had PTSD too. Okay, but Saul didn't have a relationship with the Lord. With that being said,
What I said is please don't stop because I want you to elaborate on that because a lot of people, especially people who have grown up and like you said in church and in the communities, they get confused when it relates to religion and psychology or personal conviction and psychology. So while you're on the subject of Saul and David, can you just talk a little? That was one of my questions too. Can you just talk a little bit about psychology and the church and Bible and things like that? It doesn't have to be that long, but can you just say something to help the confusion that exists as it relates to that?
we're all on a personalized journey, and some people, you know, working with veterans, everybody doesn't believe in God, but these people have done amazing things on the battlefield. And I had one sniper who educated me. He says, "No, I don't believe in God, but before I went out to do a kill, um, I would recite the Invictus poem, you know." And so I'm like, I think, I didn't say it to him, but I think that's a reference to God in there. But like, my thing is, wherever you are, your inner strength, your higher power, whatever you want to call it, that's where you are. Um, so we're talking about theories and religion. Actually, both are necessary. Our government is is based on theories and religion. And before going when you join the military, you got to choose a faith. And I learned in basic training, if I went to church on Sundays, I didn't have to do details. So I was in church,
Every
Bible
Sunday.
study. So,
We talked about the veteran experience. We talked about some of your background. And so if you want to know more about Dr. Renae Dickerson, you can Google her name. It's not hard to find. Dr. Renae Dickerson, her service matters. What do you think is the limiting factor for veterans pursuing all of the benefits that they deserve? And you want to expound on that?
what those limitations are,
Yes.
I have to be honest. Uh, I, as veterans, we have to move out of the way. First thing first, um, we oftentimes do not know that there are benefits out here that you can apply for and potentially receive. Um, and you really have to learn the process. Because just applying for it, no, you have to know the process. And it's okay. You can't do it yourself. I know you're the smartest person in the room. You're in the military. You're like super beings. But there are people who have these benefits that who can help guide the way. And I'm not talking about an attorney, and I'm not taking away from um, attorneys making their money, but the federal government has paid a lot of money for service officers to be able to guide you. But there's also the veteran service organizations like the DAV, VFW, American Legion. There is over 100. There's so many. And it's important that you connect with other veterans because you have experts in the room. I read an article about a month or so ago, and I think politicians have said that we don't have the same quality of of people in our youth, they're not willing to serve in the military. I don't even think the politician that they interviewed who stated that was ever in the military. Um, and I've learned from my veterans, most veterans, especially combat veterans, uh, they have not directed their families or their women to join the military because oftentimes they know what they could potentially experience. Okay, um, but I will say this: I would not have been able to connect with the people in my life today like you, Miss Teresa, um, the founder of Private Kathy Williams Combat Women's Group, um, and Mr. Richmond, the co-chair of Firebase Josephine, because my connections with you and what I've learned from other veterans, the sun does come up in the morning, or like Dr. Richard Doss would talk about, the sun does come up in the morning. It can get better. Um, I've seen veteran families achieve amazing things. And so I would say, yes, I would recommend that with the expectation that they are safe. Sexual harassment, sexual assault should not be on the table, um, because women have a right to serve. And there are many women in leadership positions who are very productive in society, even as mothers, as employees. So I would still, yes, I would still recommend it. Again, I have learned from the veterans that I've worked with, like what has kept them grounded. Um, and then, of course, I have, I've grew up in the church, and my parents provided a lot of guidance. But I meditate um, every day. And before I share one with you, I just want to share with you, when I was working with DOD, one of my responsibilities was to assist in the assessment process of, of recruits. So those who are needing a clearance because they're going to work with nukes, or being considered for as a Navy SEAL, or maybe there was a history of treatment for, uh, let's say, ADHD or whatever have you. So I was involved in the assessment piece, and I had one person who, um, the drill instructors wanted this guy in the military, but he could not pass this. This was in the Navy. He could not pass the swimming um, duty, or I mean task, or firing his weapon. So that's how he came into my office. And I was just impressed with this young man. And so it was just, he explained, why, what happens when he tries to, get into the water, or when he tries to fire a weapon. For this young man, he witnessed a suicide, well, the murder and suicide of his parents when he was 3 years old. Then the home that he was placed in, um, it was a relative home. He was molested from age 3 to age 14. And by age 14, he ran away from home and found a family that would allow him to stay with them and work. He was a straight A student, and he ended up going to college. Also, in the home that the abuse occurred in, they were also part of an occult here in Chicago. But he separated himself from that family at age 14, and went on to college, decided to join the United States Navy. And by this time, I'm a professional. I don't cry when I'm with the patient, but I'm like, how did you manage? Like, what's kept you together? Because other than jumping in the water and floating back to the top and firing a weapon, this guy was just wholly amazing. He said before his mother was killed, he said, I think she knew what was about to happen. And she said, people are gonna say things to you, people are gonna do things to you, but I named you the name that you have because it's a great name and you are great. And so and she was pouring statements like, you are great, you're going to be successful, you're going to be happy, nothing today or anything in the future will keep you from being great. But just this name, you might know of some scriptures or some affirmations. Just think of mother just pouring this into her 3-year-old son who remembered all of that when he was sharing with me as an adult. And so now I'm still crying. And he says, but that's how I make it. I said, you don't ever think about not wanting to exist? He said, yeah, I have those thoughts. But it's what my mother shared with me. That's what I hold on to. And it was also his faith as well. And so, um, and then working with the combat veterans and also those who experience and survive military sexual trauma, I've seen them do amazing things. I've seen them accomplish, you know, go on to lead Fortune 500 companies. Children grow up to be judges and doctors. Some of the best parents I've ever encountered. So those affirmations work. And one other thing, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And the doctor said, you're going to have to move her out of her home, take over all of her, responsibilities or her business, whatever have you. I tried, and Bernice said no. When I and my mother said no, and even though with Alzheimer's, I had to listen to my mother because she was handling her business. Okay, she was with full blown Alzheimer's. She was handling her business better than me, and the doctor was saying, "Listen, your mother can't do that, but she's doing it." A year later, my mother took the bus to uh, what is that? Taste of Chicago 3 times by herself. Well, no, 2 times she went with a friend. The last time she went by herself. I'm a nervous wreck. My mother was doing fine. That last that night or wee hours in the morning, she died laughing because she was on the phone with a cousin. And so called the doctor the next day. He goes, I told you she couldn't live by herself. She couldn't handle her affairs. I said, right now her house looked better than mine. He said, I don't know how she was able to do it. I said, I don't know how she was able to do it. I was a nervous wreck. But as I was cleaning her place, every cabinet door that I opened, every drawer, behind every door was an affirmation. There was a scripture, there was a prayer. My mother said, my mind is great. I can handle all my affairs. I'm like, whoa, does this really work? I witnessed it for a whole year. I'm the one, because of a doctor, took her to be examined and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But that was her faith. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but that was her faith. And so when I was working on my PhD, and I had fellow students um, in my class at the Institute of Clinical Social Work in Chicago, the students said, "You shouldn't be in this program. This is not for you. We don't think you're ready for this." And these are the students. The professors didn't say this, but I'm like one of 2 people that had my complexion. And I would just say thank you. I grew up and we were polite. And and I had my moments of doubt, can I do this? And like, wait a minute, what will my mother say? Oh, God's wisdom is my wisdom. God's intelligence is my intelligence. God's discernment is my discernment. God's knowledge is my knowledge. I can do all things through Christ. My mind is perfect. I'm whole and complete. So, um, when I graduated in 2022, I was the only person in my class who graduated. I graduated with other people who started the program before me. And yeah, and so I'm not bragging. I am just telling you, you have to keep moving forward. You have to keep your thoughts positive. You got to keep your thoughts productive. I'm not saying that reality doesn't exist. Reality exists, but you have to keep your focus on what you're trying to do, what you want to do. I just want to just briefly share that I went from surviving in the military. I was a conqueror before I went into the military. I thought I could do anything. And then, being in the military and actually fulfilling all the requirements, I was excited. But at some point, and I shared those things with you, I was at a place that I needed to learn how to survive. So I learned how to survive. I learned how to thrive, and now I'm reviving. And that is with prayer, that is with therapy, meditation, a lot of affirmations. Again, it's important that you keep your thoughts positive and productive. And just kind of keep in mind, there's this Japanese art, their vase is called kintsugi, and it's this broken pottery and it's put together with gold. That's the glue. And so I stand before you as, once broken in pieces, but I've been put back together. And that's all of us, because I think we've all gone through something, right? We have all gone through something, but you have been put back together with gold.
Nice.
Thank you.
So much.